Hello, I'm Pam Thompson. I'm a writer, poet mainly, living in Leicester, and I'm one of the organisers of Word, an open mic spoken word night that runs at Attenborough Arts. And I'm going to read from Strange Fashion, which is my collection from Pindrop Press, my latest collection. And this poem is called Home Redux. You went as far as Google Earth would take you, and your house stood out in the road in a way it never did when it was black and white, knowing its place. Before your walls were swaddled in a simulacrum of bricks or a wrap of stone veneer. Rain won't leave a trace of sorrow on those sills or walls. The wood on their front door won't bulge or splinter. The paint won't flake. A car has replaced the path. Your parents never owned a car. No wrought iron gate, everything you knew, gone. Moving on. You'd forgotten names of roads. Edward Tyler, Briardine, Armson. The whole front looks like a miniature ranch. It gets to you, these digital games. You can zoom in on a mother with her arm around her daughter. That blonde man on a bike, oblivious. You came back as a spy. Mrs. Stokes' shop where you bought K-Lide, gobstoppers, pop, sweet tobacco before you caught the bus to school. Gone. They've landscaped the gravel pits where men thought you were older. You went back as far as Google Earth would let you. Your house stood out like a sore appendage, thumbed a lift to leave. You knew your place, went back, zoomed out again, paused, hand on the mouse.
That was amazing. That just totally captured what I guess an awful lot of people have done, you know, zooming in on the areas they used to know.
Yeah.
Was that,
so I used to
yeah. That was something you did, and that was an inspiration for that poem.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Seeing the house had changed entirely.
That's incredible, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so welcome and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for I'm to be here.
So I'm going to dive straight in with the first question. I mean, you're obviously a writer. You've been a writer for a long time. When and how did you first know that you were a writer?
Well, I suppose it's a typical story, really, being good at English at school. Primary school, writing lots of stories, and then secondary school, getting into poetry, getting, you know, the teachers who understood and encouraged, and then reading poetry that I loved. Early influences, Dylan Thomas, Sylvia Plath, Ted Hughes. It was the Liverpool poets as well, and just a range, really. So school and writing at school, and then for some reason during university I stopped, which seemed a real shame looking back, but in my mid-20s I started to send stuff out, and that's when it kicked off, I think.
So what did you study at university?
Well, I studied English and History of Art for first degree, so I think it's something about, I don't know, it just seems a shame. I can't quite reconcile it with giving up writing altogether, but I seem to. Maybe academic study just blocked it, I'm not sure.
It's more critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, and if you're a beginning writer, actually getting that critical view on your own work maybe puts you off, I don't know.
Absolutely, and I hadn't sent anything out then, and so I always feel I was a bit late coming to it, or lack of confidence, who knows. But interesting.
Never too late.
Never too late. Never. No.
But how good that you had teachers who were good enough to inspire you and introduce you to those wonderful poets.
Although I do remember, I think when I must have been about 16, saying I wanted to be a writer. Another teacher said, oh, you can't do that as a job. And it's like, okay. So that kind of, and you do think sometimes, no, I can't. So, you know. But it's a shame, really, because some people do. They push on with it, and you know.
Yeah, you kind of believe what they tell you at that age, though, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But you're there now, and that's
Well, yeah.
excellent. Yeah.
You know, teacher and writer.
What are you writing at the moment?
Well, I've gone back. I did a creative writing PhD when I was teaching full time at DMU. Still teach there part time. And there was a poetry collection attached to that, which I've been revising for quite a while, a couple of years. But I've gone back to it, and I'm thinking of bringing poetry together with some lyric essay type work. I'm trying to incorporate different forms, really. So I've been working on that. I mean, the overarching theme is holography, 3D imaging, and poetry, bringing them together.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Quite a few of the poems are set in Greenwich, so I've gone back to that place particularly, which fascinates me with its space associations and its sea associations and museums. There's all sorts of connections there. So I'm going back to see what I can do with that.
Yeah, and I was looking at your blog earlier and had a look at some of the more visual stuff that you've done. Are you going to integrate some of that into it?
I hope so, because I'm very interested in bringing visual words and images together. In fact, I've not written on it for ages, so I need to be getting there, on getting blogging again, really.
Oh, it's interesting. I'll post a link on the show notes so people can have a look. Yeah. So has all this lockdown business and COVID-19 and the sort of current world situation, and I guess the Black Lives Matter unrest and the general sort of there seems to be more of a political energy at the moment. Has that affected your writing life at all?
If we go, I suppose the COVID stopped it to some degree at first, because I was ill, and I think almost definitely had that early in March or mid-March, and then all the kind of tension and unease around that. And certainly, I don't know, I've just been reading other people quite a lot. I mean, I have written, and I've written in bursts, and I've had some stuff published online, but I've been reading, you know, quite a lot of other people and getting ideas, but politically, definitely. Sometimes you feel, I certainly with the Black Lives Matter, I think, well, anything I put will feel wrong. I've been trying to sort my own head out about where I stand, really. As a white woman, you know, this idea of white privilege, and I think you have to be careful where you tread and respect what other people are saying and listen very carefully.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you kind of feel almost obliged to be an ally, but how you do that is so difficult.
How you do it with authenticity.
Yeah, and with respect. Yeah,
absolutely.
So do you think you've been in your sort of short bursts of writing, do you think you've been maybe more productive than you would normally be? Or
do you know, it's very hard to say. Sometimes I think yes, because sometimes I don't think you can gauge your own productivity. Sometimes you think, oh, I've done nothing, and then you step away from it, you think, well, actually I have. You know, that there's some stuff that was accepted and has been put on sites online. I have been taking part in online workshops. For example, the Poetry Business have been running quite a few workshops. I have a lot to write up. I'm very bad at leaving things in notebooks. So you could say I've got lots of drafts, you know, that I need to go back to. So I guess in that sense, I've been quite productive. More productive, because I have been on quite a few online workshops because they're more accessible. You know, you can get to more really quite easily, which is the irony of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this. I did an interview with Nottingham and Seattle Cities of Literature, and we were saying, you know, that although everyone's sort of shut in themselves and locked down in their own houses, not so much anymore, but in a way it sort of opens the world up in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's very strange, isn't it? It's kind of, in some ways, it's very claustrophobic, the whole idea of lockdown, because of course Leicester's locked down again now.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, the access to events and to various readings, it's been amazing.
Mm. Yeah. It's a strange situation. I mean, everyone says it's unprecedented, but it really is unprecedented. Has there been anything about it, any sort of incidents, any news reports or anything that's surprised you as a sort of inspiration for your work?
Well, huge inspiration, NHS, you know, carers, people who have so often trodden down and unsung. I'm not saying unappreciated, I think always appreciated, but unsung, you know. It won't please a lot of people, but I was quite glad to see certain sports sidelined for a change. You know, the inequality in how the pay and the conditions that compared with NHS workers, carers, and, you know, very pampered footballers, for example. It was good to see that that kind of balance had been shifted, but where it is going now, who knows? You know, what will be sustained, who knows? So that's been very heartening.
We could kind of talk about the politics of it probably till the cows come home, but
yeah.
So how has that sort of fed into your work in any way?
I think so. I mean, I would say so, possibly indirectly. Rather than tackling things head on. I find sometimes it's difficult, isn't it, this idea of writing a poem about an issue. Sometimes and it's like that authenticity thing. But I think it's definitely informs most of my work, what's going on socially and politically, but in probably oblique ways, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but certainly reading some of the things you've written, I kind of see poetry as crashing a couple of ideas together and seeing what comes out of it.
Yeah.
So it's never about one thing, it's about one
right.
thing viewed through the lens of something else.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's certainly reading your work, it seems like that's the way you work.
Absolutely. I think that's really spot on, Pippa. That's really worth thinking about. It is things together, it's juxtapositions, it's kind of, somebody said, because I'm interested in mixed media, collage and things like that, and somebody said to me, of course you are, because your poems are mixed media. I thought, actually, that's a really nice way of looking at it as well.
Yeah.
Media poetry.
Yeah. So, yeah, because the way that you've used images and words together on the page.
Yeah. I think it's very visual anyway. I've got kind of visual poetry, I suppose, but yeah.
Do you tend to use the space on the page a lot in your writing?
Yeah, I do. In fact, the collection I was talking about that I'm returned to, I was quite experimental and did it quite a lot there. And I do enjoy that kind of fragmenting and using layout and typography in different ways.
Yeah, it's certainly as a publisher, it's it can cause all sorts of headaches.
I know, I can imagine.
But it's worth doing because
Yeah.
the final result is so eye-catching, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, it's sort
is.
of it. What do you think it does to the words to have them displayed differently? You know, not in the standard 4-line stanza or whatever.
Well, it's stopping you reading in a linear way for a start, and I mean, you're reacting to it as you are reacting to visual art, so it allows you to read in different directions, different ways. I mean, and so you're receiving different meanings, you know.
It's kind of back to juxtaposition again, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, sort of which words you put near which others, and and you can't really direct the reader's eye.
You can't.
They're completely in control of their own eyes.
Absolutely, you can't. And the white space, of course, is very important. Well, it's important in any writing, I think, but any poetry in particular.
Yeah.
You know, experimental when you're actually doing stuff with that. It's interesting. When as I've been looking at holography, the equivalent in holography is light. So light is because I was looking at some hollow poems made through holographic methods, and they're like light sculptures in light in many ways, and light is the equivalent of the page, the white space of the page, which is an interesting difference.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of sort of introducing motion and transitions and things like that into your poetry?
Yes, I mean, when I started doing this PhD, I had this really wild ambition to make some holographic poetry, or do some work which was 3D and visual, but it wasn't possible because it would have been quite expensive, and also I was right at the start and I needed to think more broadly. It didn't come off, but it's certainly a possibility perhaps.
It's something you might go back to.
Yeah, I'm interested in video techniques and kind of filmic techniques.
Yeah, it's all multimedia, isn't it? I mean,
It is.
even if it's just
no
what's on
getting
the
away
page,
from
it's
it.
multimedia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leicester has a pretty strong writing community, like Nottingham. I mean, you've got the Leicester Writers Club. Is it club or group? I can't remember. Can't remember, but they're pretty strong. And there's Word, which I know has been going for how many years now?
Oh my goodness.
Many years.
It's a long time. It must be about 15 or more. I should know this. 2000s. I know I became involved in 2007. It had been going a few years before that, so it is quite long running.
Yeah, and that's presumably showing no signs of coming to an end, I hope.
Not at all. I mean, there's been some digital words online, so we've been trying to, keep a presence online. Also, there's been Word in Beast, because Lydia Towsey, of course, who's the chair, she was behind a lot of the bids for broadening Word, getting money to take Word elsewhere.
Yeah.
So now the Beast and Word occasionally, and so on. So yeah, it's still going strong.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look up the Beast and Word and put links, because I can think of quite a few of Nottingham local people who'd be interested in that. And certainly the Leicester Word is worth going along to when it starts up again.
Absolutely.
Really good evening.
Yeah.
So how are you managing to engage with the writing community at all at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's mostly via online work, the online workshops that I've been mentioning. So there's the ones that are the public ones. For example, the Poetry Business, I've done one on flash fiction, masterclass with Tanya Hirschman, which was great. It was a couple of hours, but she packed so much into that. I am in groups where I share work with a small group of people. So they're kind of private. There's one private workshopping group and one email correspondence, which has been going for quite a long time with a group of writers. So yeah, it's still going on, and reading, just reading and going online, seeing what's going on.
Yeah, good. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask something and I've forgotten what it was. Never mind. So who kind of inspires you? I mean, you've already mentioned the NHS and all the sort of key worker hero type people who are finally being appreciated. Are there any writers or historical figures or current political figures or anyone like that who inspires you?
I think it's always one of these things, isn't it? You name some and you miss some out, and you wish you'd mentioned more. Writers, particularly two poets that I've been reading as solace, I suppose, and they're two of my favourite poets, American poets, James Schuyler and Elizabeth Bishop, because it seems to me that they're poets that take you to other places very much. Schuyler, New York, looking out of windows, vistas, views, that very visual element again. Elizabeth Bishop, Nova Scotia, and various other countries, Brazil. So they present landscapes to you, cityscapes to you when you can't go out, basically. So I find great solace in that kind of part. I like the New York School of Poets and that kind of, wide-ranging American styles. So they come to mind, but I do read quite widely.
Yeah, I mean, they're both poets who sort of draw you into the poem and actually put you there, aren't they? They're that good. They,
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any contemporary poets that you're particularly interested in at the moment?
Well, let me see again. Tammy Yoseloff, who I actually know, and she brings art and poetry together as well. Her latest collection is called The Black Place, and it draws on the work of Georgia O'Keeffe, but also very, movingly about her own experience of cancer.
Yeah,
I've seen her read from it, and quite brilliantly. She inspires me because of the way she does. She takes a back seat with poetry, Tammy. She does a lot behind the scenes for a lot of people, and yet I always feel that she's never quite, perhaps not had the acclaim that she's due. But it's an excellent collection, and of course it draws on one of my favourite artists. So again, Tammy's work. Gosh, when put on the spot.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll add Tammy Yoseloff's book to the special offer for the 10% discount. So hopefully spread the word about her a bit.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your writing career, you've done loads of stuff. You've written, you've taught, you've studied, you've taken workshops, you've given workshops. So you've done a lot. What would you say you're most proud of?
Well, so I mean, as a personal achievement, getting that PhD after 7 years working full time was, I mean, in the end, it was so grueling, and you think never do it. But I was proud of that. Many years ago, also, I got a bursary from East Midlands Arts when it was East Midlands Arts, and it was a bursary for new writing and to go on a reading tour. And that kind of kick-started me in many ways. It must have been in the 90s. Kick-started quite a lot for me, and I really appreciated that. And I was a winner of a pamphlet competition, the Poetry Business, around 10 years after that. And so, again, that was important, really, as another, just stepping stone, I suppose. So those things, but also the interactions in the workshops that I've run and been to, I think they've all been precious.
Yeah, it's funny. I've done quite a few of these interviews now, and that's the question that people sort of don't like, or I don't think it's about being British and saying, oh, I'm not proud of anything I've done, it's just stuff I've done. I think it's just that as writers, I don't know, is pride something we feel, or is it slightly different?
It's strange, isn't it? Is it because we should be self-effacing, and it feels a bit too, I think we should be proud.
Yeah, I think we should.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so be proud, you've achieved a lot.
I think so.
Good. Excellent. And what do you hope to achieve in the future? I mean, you've talked a bit about what you're working on now. Where would you like that to go, and what would you want to do afterwards?
I mean, I'd like to see it find a publisher. I mean, I haven't even really thought about that as possibilities. I suspect it might be quite experimental, so we'll be looking, at some kind of publisher who welcomes that kind of work. So that would be great. I I just want to keep on doing it, really. I mean, there's no massive, I have no massive ambition, you know. I'd like to do more teaching of creative writing, you know, in some capacity. That'd be great.
What do you find about that makes you want to do more?
Yeah, I enjoy the exchanges. I enjoy being enthusiastic and perhaps showing people new, because I always use poetry in the workshops, other people's poems, introducing people to new work, being enthusiastic about what they can write, just all of that.
Yeah, and I guess watching people sort of realise that they can do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's the end of the list of questions. Thank you so much. It's been a really fascinating discussion. We'll have to get together and talk sometime more about the things that you're doing.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
So have you got a reading that we could end with, please?
Yeah, I have.
Excellent. Thanks again. It's been
okay.
Great.
Thank you, Pippa. Thanks. That was great. I'm going to read the title poem. The illustrations by a friend called Ben Webb. He's a talented musician and artist, and it's called Strange Fashion, Canary Wharf. The book's called Strange Fashion. It was an ice sculpting competition, Canary Wharf, which I went to, and the theme was Strange Fashion. It's the kind of imagined poem from, it's a man's point of view, an imaginary member of one of those teams. Strange Fashion, Canary Wharf. Teams from round the world begin to carve, but January sun is cruel, even though it's cold, and they slip industrial sheeting down each block inch by inch. Although it's another world when banking towers' windows no longer reflect clouds, instead are lit like the moon-shaped globes above the plinths. And skittering shadows spill their shapes, inside which, from some angles, two men perform a ballet. You can only use the purest water, oxygen wrung out. Blocks arrived in lorries were hauled by cranes. You have to work at speed, yet be precise. Not let your rival see a clumsy jab or when the chainsaw slips. For months before, two guys obsessed, we sketched the theme in pubs, each other's houses. He'd sourced the tools, saws, assorted drill bits, chisels. I'd planned the getting there, the setting up. We had our fans. He liked to banter, a flirt. I kept our focus, an eye on the time, the weather. I'd reach up to start the face. He'd score the folds of her gown, our queen of the night. Plane her shoulders, with a blowtorch make them gleam. He went to Spain to research that team's technique, never came home. I see his wife sometimes in the street, but we don't speak. By midnight, it was all over. Peripheral vision sometimes fails. He sculpted her crown, blue glints, silver, black. The way he looked at the face I'd made, the way he looked.